April 1945, San Diego, California. The war in the Pacific is not over, but for one young woman on Logan Avenue, the worst of it already is. Her husband went up a black, volcanic beach on a far island in February and did not come back. Now a notice from the housing office sits on her kitchen table, and a benefits letter she cannot make sense of sits beside it. 28 years old, 2 small children, and the government that took her husband cannot seem to find its way to helping her keep a roof over them. Outside a downtown coffee shop near Broadway, a tall man in a pressed jacket sets down his cup and watches her hurry past with a baby on her hip. Nobody recognizes him yet. Here is the story. Her name was Evelyn Brennan. She was 28 years old in the spring of 1945, and she had been a widow for 6 weeks. Evelyn was born Evelyn Doyle in 1917 in San Diego, in the working Irish Catholic neighborhood around St. Joseph's, the daughter of a tuna fisherman who worked the boats out of the harbor. Her father, Patrick Doyle, had come out from Boston for the fishing, and San Diego's tuna fleet was one of the biggest in the world then. Evelyn grew up on the smell of the canneries and the sound of the boats, and she knew, the way harbor families know, that some men go out and do not come back. The sea had taught her that early. She did not know the war would teach her the same lesson again. She married Thomas Brennan in 1939. Tom was a big, laughing young man who drove a delivery truck for a bakery and sang in the church choir badly and happily. They had 2 children, Kathleen, who was 4, and little Tommy, who was 18 months and had never really known his father's face except from a photograph on the radio cabinet. When the war came, Tom joined the Marines. By early 1945, he was a rifleman in the 5th Marine Division, and in February of 1945, the 5th Marine Division went ashore on a small volcanic island in the Pacific called Iwo Jima. 8 square miles of black ash and tunnels that would cost nearly 7,000 American lives in 5 weeks. Tom Brennan was killed on the 6th day, somewhere below the mountain, on ground the whole country would soon see in a photograph of a flag going up. He was 29 years old. Evelyn had a way about her that people remembered. She had a faint scar that split her left eyebrow. She'd taken a fall off a cannery dock as a girl of 10, and when she was frightened or holding back tears, she would touch that old scar with 2 fingers, the way another person might touch a rosary. Her children would see their mother's hand drift up to her eyebrow and know, without being told, that she was somewhere far away and hurting. The Brennans lived in a small rented place on Logan Avenue in Barrio Logan near the harbor. Evelyn kept the radio going to keep the silence out, and that spring it played Bing Crosby and the Andrews Sisters and Sentimental Journey by Les Brown and Doris Day, which was everywhere that year and which made her cry every time because Tom was never coming home from his. A loaf of bread was 9 cents. She drove, when she had gas rations, a tired 1938 Plymouth that Tom had kept running. Tom's Marine pay had stopped. The survivor's benefits had not started, and the difference between those 2 things was about to put Evelyn Brennan and 2 babies out on Logan Avenue. On the morning of April 18, 1945, at 10:30, Evelyn went to the federal benefits office on State Street to find out why the widow's pension and the Marine death gratuity owed to her family had not come. The man behind the desk was a clerk named Harold Stutz in shirt sleeves and a green eyeshade, with a thick file. He did not stand. He read, "Mrs. Brennan, regarding the claim for survivor benefits, the file shows a discrepancy. The service number on your marriage and dependency affidavit does not match the service number on the casualty report. Until the records are reconciled, the claim is held. The department cannot disperse against a mismatched file." "My husband is dead," Evelyn said quietly. "On Iwo Jima? How is a number more real than that?" "I don't make the rules, ma'am. The number has to match. You can file a correction. It takes time." He closed the file. There were 2 other women waiting behind her, war wives by the look of them, and they heard every word. Next. Evelyn stood very still. Her hand drifted up and touched the scar through her eyebrow. She did not raise her voice. She did not cry in front of the other women. She gathered her purse and the file and little Tommy on her hip, and she walked out onto State Street into the spring sun. With a dead husband, the government could not match to a number 2 children and a rent due she could not pay. Where are you watching from? Drop your state in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches. The tall man outside the coffee shop was John Wayne. He was 37 years old that spring. Already a star, already Duke. He was in San Diego for an ordinary reason. He had been doing what he did all through the war when the cameras weren't rolling, visiting servicemen. He'd made USO trips and hospital visits, and that week he was down at the Naval Hospital in Balboa Park visiting wounded Marines. Back from the Pacific, men torn up on the same island where Tom Brennan died. He had stopped downtown for a cup of coffee on his way. He could not serve. He carried that, the way some men carry a stone. While other men went, he had stayed and made pictures, and he never fully forgave himself for it. So he did the thing he could do. He showed up where the wounded were. He learned their names. He was at the counter when Evelyn Brennan hurried past the window with the baby and the file folder, and he saw her stop on the sidewalk and touch that scar at her eyebrow and stand a moment, gathering herself, the way a person does when they have just been told no by someone who would not look at them. And he saw the gold star pin on her coat, the pin that meant she had lost a husband or a son in the war. Something in Duke went still. He did not go to her on the street. He learned from the waitress what everyone in the neighborhood already knew. The Brennan boy killed on Iwo, the widow getting the runaround downtown over her benefits, the rent coming due. And here is what John Wayne understood that he had no business understanding. He had spent the war around military paperwork, around the men who pushed it, and the officers who could cut through it. He'd sat with enough wounded Marines and their case officers to know how a single wrong service number could freeze a family's whole life, and that somewhere a correct number existed on a casualty report, on a unit roster, in a file that could be matched if someone with a name made the call. So he made the call. He reached an officer he had come to know through his hospital visits, a Marine casualty affairs officer at Camp Pendleton. And he asked one favor: pull Thomas Brennan's service record, find the correct number, and match it to the widow's file. It was not a matter of money. It was a matter of 2 clerks in 2 offices never talking to each other, while a widow went hungry. The records were pulled. The numbers were matched. The discrepancy turned out to be exactly what Evelyn had said it was. A typist's transposed digit on a form, 2 numbers, swapped, nothing more. It had held up a Marine widow's entire survival over a clerk's slipped finger. The claim was released within the week. $3,140 in death gratuity and back pension, with the monthly survivor's benefit to follow, enough to keep the place on Logan Avenue, enough to raise Kathleen and little Tommy. Duke never gave the office his name. He let it move as a favor between men who had been to the hospital wards. He never once spoke to Evelyn Brennan. Have you ever had someone quietly fix the one small thing that was crushing your whole life? At the very moment a stranger behind a desk told you there was nothing to be done. That moment changes everything, doesn't it? John Wayne never knocked on the door on Logan Avenue. He finished his hospital visits that week, signed his name on plaster casts and in autograph books for boys who would never walk right again. And he drove back up the coast to Los Angeles. He left no word for Evelyn. The officer at Pendleton was asked only to say that the error had been caught in review. Evelyn would spend years believing the government had simply, finally, done the right thing on its own. He drove north up the coast road with the Pacific on his left, the same ocean that had taken Tom Brennan, the same ocean he kept crossing to sit with the men it sent back broken. Evelyn Brennan kept the house on Logan Avenue. She raised both children there. She never remarried. And she went to work in 1946 in the office of the San Diego tuna cannery, where her father had once brought his catch, and she worked there 29 years and ran the payroll office for the last 15 of them. She raised Kathleen and Tommy on a war widow's pension and a cannery wage and a refusal to let the world see her cry. Kathleen grew up and became a Navy nurse. She served at the same Balboa Naval Hospital, where a tall stranger had once visited the wounded, though she never knew it. Little Tommy, who never knew his father's face, joined the Marine Corps the day he turned 18, served in Vietnam, came home, and spent his life working with a veterans group in San Diego, helping other families cut through exactly the kind of red tape that had once nearly put his mother on the street. Evelyn lived to be 91. She died in 2008 in San Diego, with Kathleen and Tommy and a room full of grandchildren around her. She never knew the name of whoever had caught the error in review. She only knew that in the worst spring of her life, when a man behind a desk told her a number mattered more than her husband's death, somebody, somewhere, had decided that it didn't. It is kept in a shadow box on a wall in San Diego in the home of Tommy Brennan, the Marine. Inside the glass, his father's Purple Heart, a photograph of a laughing young man in a Marine uniform and a gold star, and tucked into the corner, a small yellowed slip, the original 1945 benefits correction notice, the one that finally released Evelyn's claim, with the corrected service number typed beside the wrong one, 2 digits swapped. Evelyn had kept it her whole life because it was the piece of paper that had saved them, and she never quite understood how it had finally moved. Tommy understood. Late. In the 1990s, working with his veterans group, he met an old retired Marine casualty officer at a reunion. A man who, hearing the Brennan name, went quiet and then told him a story about a movie star who used to come to the Balboa Hospital during the war, who had once asked him, as a personal favor, to run down a swapped service number for a widow on Logan Avenue, and to keep his name out of it. The old officer had kept that promise for 50 years. He only broke it because the boy on the hip in that story was now a gray-haired Marine standing in front of him. Tommy added one line to the back of the shadow box in pen. A man we never met fixed one number and gave us our whole lives. He asked for nothing. He didn't serve, so he served us instead. If this story reached you, do me a favor, pass it on. Share it with a veteran in your life. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. There are more Duke stories coming, and unfortunately, they don't make men like John Wayne anymore.